Hello friends and happy Capesmas! Today I'm going to be walking you through the Dusk cape pattern step by step. This cape is designed to have the most volume as possible both in the hood and in the cape itself, so that when you're running through the woods and calling up ancient forces long forgotten to man, you will be nice and cozy. I won't lie to you, I redrafted this cape pattern 4 times to get it exactly how I wanted, and what I finally landed on included giving you a dart and a gore insert guide to construct a main body piece with the entire width of your fabric, to give you maximum fabric usage efficiency. Just look at this layout image. The whole thing going on here is that you have to use like a teensy tiny bit of drafting skills in order to get the pattern to work. It's like a baby step into the world of pattern drafting. But that's enough from me. Let's jump in.
Like I said before, this is going to be a very interesting cutting out process, so let's start with all of the basic pieces. On roughly 2 yards of fabric, you'll be able to fit the thorn pocket, the front edges, the neckties, 1 set of gores, as well as the hood. When cutting out your pieces, be sure that you're cutting them out on the grain line, and then use your front panel pieces to measure out the length of your back panel of your cape, or the main body piece. You want this piece to be the same length as the straight edge of the front panel, and you're just going to mark that either with chalk or by tracing it out with your scissor, and then follow the grain line to get one large rectangle. Next, you're going to lay the shoulder dart on the top edge of the fabric, preferably more towards the cut edge of your cape and not the fold, and then you're going to want to mark all of your lines from the back side of the fabric, including, of course, the gore insert line. As you can see here, I've marked with pins the length of the gore insert, and instead of marking it with fabric markers, I'm just going to go ahead and cut a straight line straight on the grain right here. So long as you follow the grain line and your gore insert sections are not right on top of each other, you're going to wind up with a successful cape. Repeat these steps for the second gore insert, and I would recommend that you make them about 1.5 feet away from each other. As I previously said, it'll help you get a successful cape design. Then you're going to want to cut out 1 more set of gores minimum, or if you would like, you can cut out another 2 sets of gores, giving you a grand total of 8 gores in this cape. However, if you're using the front panels, that many gores will not really be necessary to achieve a high level of volume. For added volume and coziness, you may want to add the optional front panel. The front panel is cut out of the same fabric as the rest of your cape, and you will want 2 of them, 1 for each side in the front. Simply lay it face down on your cape and pin that seam together. The angled side should be facing outwards. Sew this down with a 5/8 of an inch seam allowance and a straight stitch. And of course, remember to iron it. If you are going to add in the front panel, I would strongly recommend gathering your cape, or at the very least gathering it in the front to accommodate the added length of the panel. To start with, if you have any gores that are double gores, especially in your front, you're going to want to sew your gores together first before inserting them into your cape. You do this by sewing a straight stitch 5/8 of an inch away from your raw edge, just like you would any other seam. And then you're going to take it over and press it well. You want to make sure that your corner is nice and flat before continuing. Line your gore up face down along one of the insertion slits. Make sure that the corner sticks up just a little bit past the edge. This will allow your actual seam lines to meet in a corner instead of running over each other. Also, it'll make for a stronger gore. And then with the same straight stitch and 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, you're going to just attach these on your handy dandy sewing machine. Some people like to prefer to hand sew their gores, and I will link a tutorial for that if you are interested in doing a more couture or historically accurate method. Be very careful and make sure that you backstitch both on the top and the bottom of your insertion gores. We don't want them falling apart on you now. When your gore is half done, it should look a little bit something like this. And what you're going to do next is simply fold your cape over and line up the raw edge of the gore insertion slit and the side of the gore, and make sure there are no wrinkles or lumps or bumps, and pin that in place. Then you'll take it over to your sewing machine and once again use a straight stitch and a 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Place your hood pieces right sides together and pin all along the top and back of the hood, leaving the front edge and the neck opening unpinned. Then with a 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, you're going to sew this pinned section of the hood, remembering to backstitch at the beginning and end of the seam line, and of course remembering not to sew over any pins. Before attaching your hood to your cape, you're going to go ahead and sew in the darts. I like to pin along the red lines. Simply line up the lines of the dart and pin them in place before taking them over to the machine. I like to start point first and then sew down, but there's a lot of other ways to do it, and I'll link a tutorial on sewing darts. For a nice professional finish, go ahead and tie off your loose threads before taking pinking shears to finish off this seam. You don't want any extra bulk in your hood. Before attaching your hood, go ahead and do the gathering. I like to do a straight stitch on the longest setting in my machine and then pull on the top thread to gather in all of my excess fabric. I distribute these gathers as evenly as possible and then pin my hood down to my cape. To pin your hood to your cape, I find it's easiest to lie the hood face up and then pin my cape down onto the hood. And whether I've gathered the hood to the cape or the cape to the hood, I like to sew my garment with the gathers facing upwards. This seam is sewed with a simple straight stitch and a 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. And whatever you do, don't forget to backstitch. To start the hem for the bulk of your cape, fold under the fabric by 1/8 of an inch and press it down. I recommend doing this in stages, so press all the way around before continuing and folding your fabric under by 1/2 of an inch. You're going to press this as well and pin it just a bit and take this over to your machine. From the right side of your fabric, go ahead and sew this down. Feel free to follow the guide mark on your machine for 1/2 an inch and make sure that your needle is catching the back end of the hem fabric with every stitch. Better slow than sorry. Now the bottom edge of your cape is going to be a little bit more difficult to hem. I would actually recommend ironing this all in one go. This is because the folded section of your hem fabric is going to need to be eased into place with steam from your iron to make it lay flat. And that's easier to do in one go than in 2 strips. But once you have all of your hem fabric finagled and laid flat, you can go ahead and put it through your machine. This is very similar to the way you did the rest of the hem for the cape, albeit a bit wider, as this hem is 1 inch wide as opposed to being 1/2 an inch wide, but I still recommend going slowly and carefully. To make your tie straps, the first thing you're going to do is fold down the edges and press them in. All of the raw edges should be facing inwards before you fold it in half. This will encapsulate all of them perfectly. Take this over to your sewing machine and with a straight stitch, go ahead and stitch along the edges of your tie front. You'll likely want to go along the folded edge as well so that it matches. Now you're going to sew your ties down to your cape. I like to sew them along the seam where your hood meets your body. If you're going to be understitching the seam allowance, it's a really good idea to hide the ends of your tie front under the understitching, or alternatively, you can do some hand stitching to whip them down, and this looks very aesthetic and historical, or you can always just do some nice easy top stitching with your machine. Whatever floats your... This cape has a little secret pocket on the inside. Now this pocket will be completely invisible if you use hand stitching and have a nice thick fabric and of course thread of a matching color. I'll be using a contrasting color both because I plan on dyeing this cape black and because I wanted you to be able to see my stitch work. But before we start stitching, you're going to want to prep your pocket by sewing the top hem just as you would any other hem and pressing down the seam allowance of the pocket by 1/2 of an inch. Then simply place the pocket on the inside of your fabric. As you can see, I've already treated my seams, and I've just gone in there and I'm doing a quick simple catch stitch, taking 1 or 2 threads of my main fabric and grabbing onto the pocket with a nice sturdy loop. And as you can see, my stitches are very close together. This is going to keep my pocket attached nice and cleanly, and as you can see, they get even smaller at the bottom. This is where the most force is going to be exerted on my pocket. And from the outside of the fabric, you barely see where the stitches are. This is because of how plush and luxurious my fabric was.
The Dino Gore, Gnome, and Nymph Cape tutorials are already up on Kofi and on my YouTube channel. Also, I tricked this cape out with some luxury details in the Treating Yourself video I believe is coming out after this one. So if you want to see how I've attached this hood to my head so securely, go check that out! Anyways, I've been Maya Grace, you've been watching Capesmiths, and thank you so much for stopping by! Bye friends!